Welcome to Popplers Music Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Gratton, and every episode we sit down with the voices shaping the future of music education, from classroom educators and university professors to composers and professional musicians who inspires the next generation of musicians. I hope you enjoy today's conversation. Welcome to the Popplers Podcast. Today, the video is going to be a little bit different. Unfortunately, the day that we went to film this, I had lost my voice. It was such a bummer because we had planned this conversation with Michael for a couple months, and leading up to it, I haven't lost my voice in years, but I couldn't talk. So Alison jumped in, and let's call this a conversation between two music educators. For those of you that don't know, Michael and Alison are married. Alison is a former music educator, and Michael is a current music educator. So please enjoy a conversation between two music educators.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Popplers Podcast. You may notice that I am not Josh Gratton. My name is Alison Thompson. I'm a member of the sheet music /podcast/ video production team here at Popplers. Josh has unfortunately lost his voice today, so we have swapped places. He's going to be behind the camera, and I'm going to step in for him here in the podcaster's chair, which is as stylish as they are comfortable, might I add. And what a time for me to do this, because by chance, the guest today happens to be one that I am fairly well acquainted with, Mr. Michael Thompson, who happens to also be my husband. Michaels, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, yes. We are super excited to have Michael on our podcast today for many reasons. This podcast is primarily about music education. We've been looking for opportunities to have some local music educators on the show, and so Michael has graciously volunteered his time to be one such guest. So thank you, Michael. Are you enjoying the last few days of your holiday break?
Oh, yeah. I've been back at school now a little bit, getting back in the swing of things, but it's been a nice time away to just decompress.
Yes, recharge. And you've had a couple weeks off.
Yes, our school had 2 full weeks and then the weekends.
Very nice.
Music teachers you need after the Christmas season. So
it is one of the busiest times of the year for music teachers, for sure. Fabulous. Well, to get started, just kind of a baseline question for any listeners out there who may not know who you are. Can you tell us a little bit about where you teach and what you teach?
Yeah, so I am right now the high school ensembles teacher at Marshall County Central in Newfolden. So I had both the band and all the bands and all the choirs at MCC. It's a school in a really small town up in northwest Minnesota called Newfolden. I've been the music teacher there now for 5 years, but my job has changed quite a bit in that time. I've done everything from elementary general music, like 3rd grade through 6th grade. I've done high school general music classes, band lessons. I've always been the choir teacher there. And then there's even one year where I did a 4th grade Phi-Ed for a year. So small school life.
And before your current gig, what was your teaching experience prior to taking your job at MCC?
MCC has been my only job. So I got my education at the University of North Dakota here in Grand Forks. I have degrees both in music education and in vocal performance. So I really grew up more on the choir side. But I come from band because my dad was my band teacher growing up.
Shout out Brad.
Yep. I have a lot of background in band, a lot of comfort talking about and conducting bands because it's just, it was always in the house. When I was 3 years old, I was conducting my stuffed animals and playing trombones that he brought home. So yeah, I student taught here in Grand Forks at Red River High School and at Ben Franklin Elementary. And both of those experiences really, really helped because I think not only for music education, but for all education, the college, it gives you the knowledge, but there's nothing that really prepares you to be out in the field and having to handle real world situations.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So music has really been almost part of your DNA growing up, with your dad being a music director. I mean, your mom is very musical as well.
Yep.
So it's kind of That's really cool how that has been so integral to your...
Yeah, it is. It has been my life since I was a kid, really.
Yeah. So in that whole journey, because what an amazing journey that is to come from such a musical place, and now here you are years later as a full-fledged music educator.
It's in the blood.
Can you speak a little bit on that journey and what and who kind of inspired you to go into music, and not just music, but like to teach it specifically? Because I know you were performance as well, but that was kind of as a vehicle to your teaching as well, correct?
That's absolutely right. I did the performance degree to help give me more teaching tools, more than anything, although I do enjoy performing. I mean, there's so many people who I can talk about and give credit to for getting me to where I am. Obviously, number one on that list is my dad, for sure. I mean, that just from not only being in his classes, but just being around him at home and seeing how he operates. And I think that when you're because my mom is also a teacher, not a music teacher, but she's a teacher. When you grow up around education and you go into education, you have a better idea of what it's like and what to expect. And then musically, I think there's a lot of things that I really learned from him, just how to work with ensembles and being an observer, because that's where you pick up so much of your skills, is just by being an observer in an ensemble. My high school choir director, Sarah Carpenter, also incredible. She really showed what's possible in a rural school district, because I grew up in a small school, 15 kids in my graduating class, and seeing like we had a 7th through 12th choir, which you don't see a 7th through 12th choir in larger school districts, because the high school is 9th through 12th, and to see how she handled different levels of vocal development and what you can do, and you can still make really great sounds in that type of ensemble. My piano teacher, Mrs. England, also, I think I really learned about music, the ins and out of what are chords, how do these notes work together, all those aspects that you just need general knowledge. It's building those skills and instincts for later on. In college, I can't not mention Mrs. Melanie Popejoy, because I think every person who's gone to UND Music has left a better person because of Mrs. Popejoy. I think I take a lot of my teaching philosophies from her, in the way she cares for her students and in the way she makes everybody feel important, and how that influences culture in the classroom. And then Dr. Gillick, who was my other really choir specialist. From him, I got a lot of my conducting skill, I think, and also the importance of being okay with being yourself and being vulnerable in front of kids and being in front of the classroom. I think that's important when you talk about music, because music is being in a state of when it's done well, it is a state of vulnerability. So I like those. There's so many other people, teachers in college and stuff, but I think those are people who I've taken a lot from.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I love that you gave a shout out to Mrs. Popejoy. She's one of my personal heroes as well. I'm sure if you're listening to this and you are from the Grand Forks area, you know Mrs. Popejoy. Yeah, wonderful. That's so cool. So you talked a little bit about your inspirations growing up in a small school music program, and now the school you teach at is in a small school music program. Shout out to Newfolden, which I looked it up for this podcast, has a population of 345. So there you go. And of course, I know MCC has students that come from some of the surrounding communities as well. But now that you are also in that position as a teacher this time, what are some of the unique aspects you've found on this side of the podium, so to speak? What are the unique things about teaching music in a small town, kind of more rural setting?
I mean, there's definitely a lot. I think the first thing that I look at is that you don't look at these as... You look at the challenges as opportunities. You have the hand that you're dealt, and it's what you do with that hand.
I love that.
That matters. So I think some of the things that, I'll phrase it, that maybe people are nervous about going into rural education, and they are things and challenges that I do deal with all the time on a daily basis. I think one of them on the more practical side is the schedule. In a rural district, you are a lot more limited in the schedule. You have less teachers, there are less electives, there are more things that are against me right now. My junior high choir, I have a Phi Ed class against it, which if you've ever tried to convince a 7th or 8th grade boy to choose to come and sing instead of go and play around and throw dodgeballs at their friends, it's a hard sell. My high school, right now, in both my band and my choir, have some kids who are going to be leaving for this just a semester because there's a small engines class against band and choir, and they want to be mechanics when they're out at night. I'm not going to tell them, no, you should stay in this music class, even though I truly believe music is so important. If it's something like that it's part of your career, yes, you should go and do that. But dealing with some of those schedule things can be a challenge. I think that's across the board in small schools. That's something I've heard talking to other teachers is, and I like asking them, like, what do you do for your schedule? Because these are the challenges that I face, and a lot of them have similar experiences. Kind of along those lines, there are challenges just with kids being involved in so many things, which is one of the greatest things about being in a small school, is that you can do 3 sports, you can be in knowledgeable, you can be in robotics, you can be in choir and a band, you can do all these things and be great at all these things. But it's hard, for me to ask a kid to do all this extra work for choir when I know that they're in basketball and knowledgeable and the musical at the same time. It's harder to really build those elite ensembles where the kids are just really focused on that. So it's doing the best that we can, make sure I'm asking the kids a reasonable amount so they don't see my ensembles as a burden in any way. It's finding that balance. And sort of along those lines, but kind of separately, I found that it's harder in a small school sometimes to build unique cultures in your ensembles, like that familial family type culture, because kids already know each other and they already have predetermined relationships because they see each other all the time. So if you have 2 kids that don't get along outside of choir, it's hard for me to ask them to be, this family group in choir. It's harder to kind of have our own unique kind of microcosm of culture in that room, especially with the junior high kids.
I could see how that could almost give them like a vehicle to find that common ground with somebody.
And it has to be talked about and actively pursued. It's not just, you do it by action as well, but it has to be something that is brought to the front of what you're doing as a teacher.
Mm-hmm. So you talked a little bit about, like, there are some unique challenges that come with teaching in a smaller school. What are some of the advantages? What are your favorite things about teaching in the environment that you teach in?
I find that building relationships with some of the teachers, kids, the community, those relationships are really strong because in a small community, they have to be. There's my relationship with the custodians, my relationship with the office and the secretaries and the other things. That's something that I don't think you always get at these larger school districts, who the music department is in its own little area and those are the people that you talk to. And that's still a fantastic. Sometimes I wish I had more music colleagues that I can talk to about music things, but the fact that I'm as close as I am to the rest of the staff is really cool. I think another thing, the students, I think there are some really incredibly well-rounded students, which goes back to that, like, kids are in so many things.
Yes.
And I hope that my kids someday can be a part of that they don't have to be the music kid. They can be an athlete and be a musician and succeed in the musical or robotics. They can do all of these things. And I think you see some really just phenomenal kids who are ready for the world, who've just had so many unique experiences that are different from each other.
Right. What an opportunity to have so many opportunities. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. You spoke a little bit about just the wide range of things that you have taught
Yes.
over is 5 years, right?
5 years. This is year 5.
Yes. And from Phi Ed to elementary music to choir across, I guess 6, right? 6 through 12?
Yeah,
Choir?
choir 6 through 12.
And then band, which was 4 through 12, but now is
5 through 12.
5 through 12.
Yep.
So you are working daily with so many different age groups, and not only different age groups, but different, different ensembles, of course. Different ages, grade levels. How do you adapt your teaching approach to engage students across such a wide range of age groups and musical abilities? And there's something to be said too, that your ensembles are spread out across larger ages maybe than is sometimes the case in other schools.
I think, first of all, the ages, I think that's just not just a music thing, but I think all teachers have the challenge of figuring out a way to make your content engaging for the age that's
True. Yeah.
that you're doing it. The way that I teach my junior high choir is very different than the way I teach my senior high choir. Junior high kids need a lot more energy. I'm glad I have them after my high school choir because I am just drained every day. I have 70 junior high kids in my choir right now, 6 through 8.
That's a lot of kids.
It's a lot of kids. Well, I mean, it's not super big. And to keep those kids engaged for an hour, which is how long my class period is hard. Some days I win, and some days I don't win that battle. But knowing that I need to bring that energy to that group is important. And I know after my high schoolers leave, I have to do a mental reset. It's I need to change my mode here because it's a different animal. In my high school group, if I brought that kind of energy, they would think I was nuts and I would lose them. So I need to have a little bit more calm, more thoughtful approach. And I can, and that's one of the reasons I love being able to do that high school age too, is I can be more calm and detailed and have more serious conversations with them about the music. In junior high, it's more about teaching them how to rehearse, I think, rather than just teaching them the music. As far as ability levels, this is another challenge with a small school, I think, is you're more limited in the ensembles that you can have. I have a junior high choir and a senior high choir, and same with the junior high band, senior high band. I really don't have, I started one last year. I'll talk about that in the second one, but auditioned groups, which I think are so important for helping those high flyers that every school has. Those are a lot harder to fit into a schedule. So this last 2 years ago, last year, I started an audition chamber choir that we meet at 7 a.m. because it doesn't fit in the school day. So we've been meeting, and that's been really, really great to have some of my really, really high flying, really talented choir kids who want to be pushed and who are willing to get up at 7 a.m. to come to that rehearsal to push them. And I think that that's a really, really important. You have to have groups that fit different ability levels. And then another one is having private lessons. I think that's huge. Right now, I've been kind of knocking around ideas and trying to figure out ways that I can continue doing some sort of private lessons into some of my older grades. Because right now I have lessons with every single elementary band kid individually, which is huge.
Awesome.
It's huge. It's not something every district has. And my elementary band program is, I think, really strong because nothing substitutes for that true one-on-one instruction. But then when we get into junior high, I don't get to see them at all for lessons, so it's harder to keep that developing going as they get older. So I think the private lessons is huge because you really do get. I mean, that's what all the buzzwords are in education is one-on-one instruction, smaller groups, and can't get any smaller than one-on-one.
How do you define a strong music program in any school?
Love that question. Well, I think we need to get rid of some of the myths first. Numbers don't define a strong music program. They can help, for sure, but numbers, in my years, I think the biggest truly elective choir, because my junior high is kind of half elective, half not, I've had has been like 35. Most of my groups sit between 20 and 30, but the kids who are choosing to be in there care about being in there and want to work towards that quality product. I think the number one thing for me is, do kids leave my classroom feeling fulfilled? Do they look forward to being in there? Right now, I have my schedule where my senior high group is right after lunch, and I have kids who come in to my room early because they just want to hang out with each other or with me or whatnot. Like, do they want to be in my classroom? Do they look at it as a break from their normal school day?
And what a gift that is to give them that safe space. I think that's something that's very common across all music programs, that it's a place where people can go to feel accepted and to have that sense of family and community.
And it kind of goes back where if kids are willing to be themselves and be vulnerable, making music becomes so much easier. Your rehearsals are so much more efficient because the kids are engaged. They want to be there. They want to be great. And they want to perform and sing or play, not just both for themselves and for the person sitting next to them. So I think having that, teaching them to look at music with joy and to love
that's
music.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And I think it's so important too, and such a thing that is unique to the arts. Like you talked about, kids are willing to be vulnerable. If, music is so intrinsically tied to emotion, and it's so helpful for kids to have that way of learning to be vulnerable and to understand their emotions. And that is a huge life skill that transfers out into so many other areas beyond school. So with that definition in mind, what strategies have you developed, have you discovered across your years of teaching to build that strong music program, just in general and in the small school environment specifically?
I think some of these answers are in, we've kind of touched on already, but I think finding ways to get in small groups or one-on-one is really important. Both building relationships. I mean, it's my junior high choir. That is my biggest challenge. It's really hard to build relationships when I have 70 kids in the classroom. To have that moment with a kid at the beginning of class is hard, and to make sure I'm not just giving attention to 7 kids who are in the front row. So finding ways to connect with kids individually, and then also having time where you can build skill as an individual or as a small group. I've used the analogy that teaching choir is like lining up a sports analogy, because I have athletes in my choir. If I lined up 40 people to shoot a free throw, and I have to come up with comments that are going to help all of them, even though all of them have different problems.
Right.
That's what it's like working in an ensemble. So when you can get those smaller groups, it's so much easier to another educational buzzword, differentiate your instruction to make that, to fix those individual problems. I think that's a really, really big thing. And another thing in small districts that's not even in the classroom, but it comes back to building relationships with the people in your building. You're knowing how to work with administrators, which isn't something that we talk a lot about in college, and it's because you can't really practice it a lot in your college. But knowing what is the role of the principal in your program, what's the role of the superintendent, who do you go to for this problem, who do you go to for that problem, and having good relationships with them and understanding that their role isn't always to make you happy. Yeah. They have bigger picture things, but to know that you can go there and be heard and be listened to. Custodians are huge for music teachers. You need to know your custodians. Be nice to your custodians, because they are the ones who help you set up your programs. They're the ones who, if the heat in your room isn't working, they're the ones who have to come and fix it.
Yep. When you have 70 kids in there. And
yes. My room has been very, very warm this year. So the custodians have really been trying to fix the heat, because the smell after you have 70 kids, junior high kids, sweat in your classroom doesn't go away. That holistic approach, if you build a culture in your program through building culture throughout the school, and getting everybody behind you and knowing that you're all in the same, going in the same direction. I know, I am a huge NFL guy, School Vikes. And they always talk about in that the best teams have alignment from the ownership to the general manager, to the coach, to the players. And you have to think about the same as the school district. You have to have an idea of where your program is going, what your program needs, all the way from the superintendent to the principal, to the teachers, all the way to the kids. We all need to be on the same page. But yeah, knowing where to go with problems, knowing where to find your resources, which takes a couple years. At every district, everywhere is different. How do you ask? How do you order something? How do you get a school bus?
Call Popplers Music for all your sheet music and instrument needs.
So it's some of those things. It just takes time, and you need to know who to ask. And
Right.
don't be afraid to ask people so that you can learn where to ask.
Mhm.
Ask those people. But it takes a lot, and it takes time. I think people have to be willing to be patient. I certainly look back on my first year, and I'm like, oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. But I also didn't know that I should have done that. So I can't look back at that as a negative thing when I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But now I do, so I can use those resources the right way.
You've touched upon this already, kind of, a lot of talking about working in a small school, but also within that, the wider community.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the really cool things about, because I also grew up in a smaller town, smaller community.
Go Cardinals.
Go Cardinals. And with that smaller community, I think it's really cool to see how it sort of, you can outreach a lot more. The community can embrace the program and vice versa. What are some of the ways that you have kind of done community outreach? Maybe like memorable collaborations, events where the school and the community came together through music.
It's interesting because I have found in my district, MCC isn't a unique district, even kind of for rural districts. We have a ton of open enrolled kids who go to our school but are from other districts. And this is for various reasons. I mean, we're very, very, like our town, you said, is like 340 people at Newfolden.
345.
Yeah, and our school population is 450.
Yeah.
So there's so many kids that come from other area towns. So community is a really interesting word to choose because our community is a lot of communities. So like reaching out to just Newfolden isn't a representation of what the community of our school is.
Yeah.
Some things that I've tried. I started this chamber choir last year, and one of the things we do is we go around to nursing homes. We go around to we've done 3. This year we didn't get to go because it was a storm that day, and school was off, so we didn't get to go this year, which was sad. But,
winter storms, man.
And we go and we do caroling at area nursing homes, and I mean, I think a lot of musicians have done like nursing home gigs, and there's nothing better than going and putting a smile on those people's faces, especially around the holidays, and then showing that to the kids, like this is important to go out and share this talent, even though, I mean, it might be your first time ever singing a solo or something, but they just to go and share that means so much to people, and to hopefully to share that value with them. I love that. We did with the chamber choir last year. We also did a concert at the end of the year at the community center, like a themed concert. We did I had an all female group last year, so we did a concert about like female empowerment, and some really great repertoire. It was a lot of fun to put on that concert, and community really loved that. We call it senior tea, and around Christmas time, a bunch of senior citizens come to the community center, and some of my kids, we did chamber choir this year, but we've done like a small group out of the choir, different things. We go and we do carols for them, and they drink tea and coffee and cookies, and just another fun little outing that we can just get out into the community. Every year for my choir, we go to DigiKey, which is the huge employer out of Thief River, which a lot of our kids are from Thief River, and they always put on a big Christmas dinner for their employees, and they invite area choirs to come and sing carols. So I took my choir this year, and we went and we sang some carols for DigiKey. I have found it challenging in that way to look at at the community, because what in a rural in our district especially, it's a lot of us schools kind of up in that area that we have a lot of kids that aren't from just this community, and defining what to outreach the community. What is the community that we're trying to reach?
That's very interesting. Yeah. Very unique situation there.
Yeah. I can't remember what the stats were, but I think it's close to half of our kids are open enroll,
Okay.
which is great. I mean, our school district has grown a ton in the last couple of years, but smaller communities definitely have, I think this, there's an ownership, maybe is the right word, of like these departments and these programs. And you have to, in a small community, you got to know who to know, and to look at getting into some of these places to sing, and to who to look to for support and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
nice. I never thought about that, but the population of the school being larger than the population of the town.
Yep.
I never realized that.
That's also interesting. In our district, we have a weird setup, like an unusual setup for like how our district is like aligned. We have 3 buildings. We have one, our high school, it's middle high school is 5 through 12. Then across the street, we have 2 through 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then in a separate town, we have pre-K and 1.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird to have, there's a lot of separation even in the school. And it's not like this it's not a knock on the district at all, but it is a unique thing to have. Each of the building has its own community and culture. And
Yes.
Each building has its own perception within the community of where the involvement is, and where it's, I don't know, it is, that has been different, because I'm also union president and trying to learn about how to have union meetings when you have all these schools in different places. And but yeah, so it is a very wide net of a community to figure out how to outreach, but it's important that we do, because that's what we do as musicians, is we share our gifts.
What are some of the most rewarding moments you've had with your students? And this could be, I don't want to necessarily limit it to your current position, but even like throughout, because you've been teaching music for much longer than you've been like graduated from college, or, you know, because you taught lessons all through college, I know, right? Like vocal lessons, that kind of thing. So I don't know, kind of talk to some of those, or speak on some of those moments that really stick out, and how have those experiences shaped you as a teacher, your teaching philosophy?
It's interesting, because like as a teacher, and especially I think as a music teacher, where it's almost more the coaching mentality, looking back, like we're always taught, like when you do, find what's wrong and fix it, find what's wrong and fix it. That kind of, so it's always our job to find all the problems and fix the problems. But I think it's so important that we look back and appreciate all the things that went right.
Oh yeah.
And that we do well. And I look back on my career, and I've like some of like the big things, the obvious things. I've had 2 groups get invited to sing with collegiate ensembles, and those were so rewarding and affirming that I was doing things well. Especially like the one of them was like my second year teaching, and I felt like, okay, I'm doing things well. If Mrs. Popplers came in and heard my group, and she was so impressed, and she's like, "You want to come and sing?" And that was a junior high group, and I think like that experience for them really opened their eyes and meant a lot to them, that they got to do that, and that they were seen and appreciated by someone who wasn't just their teacher.
Yeah.
So that one was huge, and I really maintain that, just like with both UND and especially Mrs. Popplers, I always try to have her come in and work with my groups and give her input. And then the same thing happened with my chamber choir last year. We got Mrs. Popplers came and heard us a little bit, and then we got to perform at one of the UND concerts, and we got to go to UND for a day and sing with her ensembles, and take a theory and oral skills class with Dr. Barry, and having those experiences and seeing the growth and the appreciation of the kids. Those are really special moments. But on top of that, I think an interesting one for me was my first year. It's COVID year.
Yep.
And I mean, COVID year, I know so many teachers and I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot.
To put it lightly, it was
incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a Christmas concert. We did like recorded concert, and we had to walk to a church every day to have rehearsal because our room wasn't big enough to fit.
I forgot about that. In the winter.
Yep, in the winter. It was gym for a semester. It was that for a while. The thing at the end of the year, we did get to go back to the music room, but that spring we got to have a concert. Like we got to have a real concert. And I mean, it was a hard concert to figure out, and social distancing was a thing, and we had to have, figuring out how to do risers and the space kids out, but we got to have a live concert. And it was my first live concert, but it was also like this symbolic thing of like, we're going to be okay. And we sang, for choir directors, we don't know the song, Ceasing Emoja, which is like, we are one, we all sing together. Like, I mean, this text, and I chose it intentionally, but like that moment when we were singing that, and it was both my junior high and my senior high, like that was a moment that was really affirming for me. Like I felt really great in that moment.
It's powerful. Yeah.
And it's appreciating the little things, the little successes when the kids bring you a little piece of art from art class,
Yep.
or when, I don't know, I have a little tiny ice cream cone that somebody made me out of clay. I don't even remember who made it for me anymore, but that's been sitting on my desk for 3 years now. So appreciating that. And when you see the light bulb go on with a kid in a private lesson, that you see that, or you have a kid that's really talented. I mean, we work with a lot of kids, but every once in a while you get that kid who really just runs with it and can learn their instrument just super, super fast. And those are all special things. And it's so important to appreciate when those things are happening in the moment, and to not take them for granted, because it's also a lot of hard days and things that don't go right the first time, learning experiences. So
I love that example you gave of your first concert not only post-COVID, but it would have been your first live concert as a teacher. And the fact that was such a profound moment of gratitude. I mean, is that fair to say? Like,
oh yeah.
And to kind of remind ourselves that even those things that do feel kind of everyday, in and of themselves, they're so impactful for the kids.
Yeah, it's the moments. Sometimes it's the moments in between the moments too. Then it's not just in the classroom; it's before class with student, or after class, or appreciating a senior class that's really great. Last year I just had a phenomenal senior class, and that was kind of the first senior class that I lost. That it was a lot of kids, and there was a lot of really, really good kids who I was going to miss. And looking back on those, 4 or 5 years that I had with them, with all the great memories and joy. And
I mean, they were kind of the class that you were you started them.
Started in like 9th.
Yeah.
But like they had been in my senior high choir for that long, and learning to appreciate those times that you have with those really great classes and those great kids, because there are so many, we hear so often, and I mean, rightfully so, teaching is a hard profession. Teaching is a stressful profession, and there are some changes going on with kids and parents, and teachers talk about those a lot. That can be really challenging, but there are still so many great things. There are so many great kids and great moments. Then we have to give those the weight that they deserve, so that those harder moments don't sink us.
Okay, now for a question I think probably every music teacher faces at some point in their career. If you have a student in your ensemble, and I know you have, for many of your ensembles, they do choose to be there, but I think, there are a few that it might be a required class, something like that. If you have a kiddo who is kind of feels indifferent about music, how do you work with them to get them more engaged, more excited about it, and to welcome them into that?
It is hard when you have kids that are, because right now my junior high choir, I have 7th and 8th graders who choose to be there. It's an elective for them, but I also have the entire 6th grade class. That is their general music. That is their music class in 6th grade. And that has been a challenge these last couple of years, because you just have a couple sixth graders who just don't want to be there. And I tell the kids at the beginning of the year, like, I want you just to give this the absolute most honest, best shot you can. And some of them really do, and it's not for them. And some of them, I don't think they give it their best shot. They'd rather be somewhere else. But I think a huge answer to that is choosing good rep. It's choosing repertoire that they can relate to, that they know, that makes them laugh, that can be fun for them. Because that's, if you're just choosing slow, pretty songs for band or choir, kids are going to go other places with their brain during class, or they're going to go blow their nose 7 times during the day. Somehow, I don't know. They find out all those reasons to not be sitting in their chair.
Sorry, go ahead.
It is hard. I struggle with that group. I am learning a lot, and some of it is because there's 70 kids in there, and that's just a lot by itself. But talking to kids individually is always a good thing, just to see where they're at and see what I can do better, and understanding that some of it is just the situation, some of it is the student not being willing to try, some of it is things that you as a teacher can do better for them. It's finding, trying to diagnose that. But I think choosing rep is a really good solution for that. If you choose really good rep for ensemble, I think it helps. It helps a lot.
Do you have any pieces, choir or band, that have been, and I know every group is different, so this, stuff that works for your groups might not necessarily work with other people's groups, but do you have a couple, like, I don't know, that just really, really worked well for you that you would recommend?
Knowing, the 6th grade, they have to be in music, but if you have kids who are in your ensemble who, like, you've talked to them, you've worked with them, you've done all you can, and they're still, not seeming to do that. I've had the conversation, particularly with my elementary band kids who have lessons, and I see, hey, you haven't practiced for a month. Have the conversation of, hey, is this for you? Mm-hmm. Is this, because I love watching basketball, but I can say without a doubt that I don't like playing basketball. It was not for me, but there are a lot of kids who love playing basketball. And I think it's unfair of us to look at music as something that is above everything else. For some kids, it's not for them. For some kids, even when they give it their best shot, maybe their thing is robotics. To have that conversation, to be like, if you aren't willing, if this isn't working, we need to acknowledge it, and we either need to make a change or you need to find something that does bring you joy and you are willing to work at, because I don't want this class to be the reason that you're enjoying your day. It's to an extent that's 100%, like, it is partly their choice, but it's acknowledging that maybe it's just not for them, and that's okay too. To know, my second year I tried really, really hard to recruit into choir. I just tried that year. Like, I was just doing choir, I wasn't doing band. Band recruiting is very different because you start so young, but I wanted to try getting more people in my high school choir. So I was going around, I was talking to kids and be like, choir is fun. This is like, we have a blast in choir. But I had a lot of kids then who tried it, and after they did not love it. And then for the entire semester, we had 6 or 7 kids who wanted to do anything else but be in choir. So I stopped using the word fun for choir, because sometimes it's hard. It's and I don't tell my kids, yeah, choir is fun, choir or band is fun. It's meaningful. You work hard, you get better. But to have those conversations then of like, okay, we found what didn't work, and we acknowledge that, and then you move on and you get better because of it. But yeah, I think you need to talk to kids. You need to know where they're at. But you need to know when it's not working, mm-hmm. to know that you've tried everything first, and
you never know too, like, the reason behind the behavior, like if it's a behavior issue or something, if it's, they could have something going on at home, or
especially in elementary,
yeah,
see that a lot.
Things that are outside of their control but are still affecting their life. And it might not just be music class. It could be other classes too. That you've given us lots of good nuggets of wisdom today.
Yes.
And certainly, like, if there is a new teacher or aspiring teacher that is listening to this, I think there's a lot to be gleaned from this conversation. But thinking of it from that specific lens, if there was, imagine a new teacher sitting on the other side of this camera or this microphone, what advice would you give them if they're not only considering or stepping into their first roles as a music educator, but maybe if they are going into a smaller school? So kind of that broader perspective and then maybe the more specific lens.
So many things. It's like, oh, what's the best advice? What's this? And I would say that trust what you've learned, but understand that you have a lot to learn, and be a willing learner. Listen to the people around you, and use people as resources to help you. Even, I mean, I've been teaching for 5 years now, which is nuts to me. I mean, I remember my first day like it was yesterday. But it's not like I'm some kind of seasoned veteran teacher. There's still so much that I have to learn and to get better at. That's one of the things that kind of goes into this other thing is that every year, try to find one or two things that you can improve on. Every single year, try to push yourself that next step. I think it's important that you don't try to completely change yourself one year to the next. Be like, I'm going to be a completely different teacher. I'm going to do this, that, because it's going to be overwhelming and it gets to be too much. But every year you just take a step and you accept that your first year is hard. I don't even count my first year because it was COVID year and it was so strange.
Weird year.
But every year to try to find one thing. This year, my thing was I wanted to be better at recognizing student success. So I have, student of the week, student of the month, things like that. Last year, I wanted to work on trying to build like technique in my choirs. And then on top of that, it was my first year doing band. So I wanted to, learn how to be able to teach a clarinet and a flute and these instruments that I haven't learned yet. And I'm already thinking about next year. What do I need to do? For me, it's sight reading. I need to figure out a way to get my groups better at sight reading. So I'm not doing all those things in one year, even though I knew this year coming in, that's like, I should probably get more stuff at sight reading. But it's one step at a time. Be willing to be patient with yourself and be willing to be patient with your district. At large schools and small schools alike, it takes time to affect change. You have a little bit of, especially if you're coming into a district that maybe has had a struggling music program, or like when we walked in, there had been like 8 music teachers in 10 years. So you were coming in at kind of level 0 for that program. And there's a little bit more leeway that first year. You can ask for more stuff. But then after that, like it takes time. I finally, after 5 years, got my choir moved up 1 hour. So I lose less kids for leaving for sports. But it took 5 years to get to that point. And being patient with yourself, being patient with the district, letting yourself take those small steps, but always work to get better every year. Don't stay stagnant. I think then the job gets, I think that's when people really burn out, is if you try to do the same thing, exact same thing every single year.
Mm-hmm. As a former teacher, remembering going into my first couple years, like I feel like we both learned a lot from teachers that weren't music teachers necessarily, but still like experienced teachers in your district, like people you can reach out to in that way. Because it can feel a little isolating if you're the only
music teacher.
Like maybe there's 1 or 2 of you in your school or something, and you have, that relationship is obviously very valuable. But so I think kind of reaching out to maybe other area music teachers too is.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it's important to remember, and I think I knew this coming in, but I'm a lot more comfortable talking about it and saying it now, is that we're teachers before we're music teachers. Then if you're looking to get into especially a rural district, I think if you're looking for real musical fulfillment, especially early on, that can be harder. You're like, our ensembles have more limited talent pools. I'm drawn from a school of 200 in the high school instead of a school of 2,000. So you're going to have less kids who are willing to be in your ensembles. You're going to have way more wider skill levels. But to look at it as you're going there to affect change and to make kids, to help kids grow instead of, you don't need a 10 out of 10 choir. Your goal is to take maybe a choir that's at a 2 out of 10 and just really figuring things out and at your base level, and you're trying to get them to a 6 or a 7. And that's huge success for a smaller district as opposed to maybe a large district with a fully auditioned ensemble. You can do more stuff, harder songs, you can do some really, really cool things. But I think it's a different type of growth in that way. I love that about teaching in a small district, that I can really feel like I'm affecting change with kids, that I can do a lot with these kids. And
are you talking like musically or like as people, like
both? But I think musically, I think that's something to be aware of in a small district, is that you're working with, it's a different musical experience in a small school. It does not make it bad in any way, shape, or form. But it is different. You have to have expectations that are realistic for a small school. It doesn't mean you don't have high expectations for your kids, or that you are expecting to have ensembles that don't sound good. Your job as a teacher is to get them to the point where they do sound good. But I think that it's important to understand that you might not in a small district go in and have an 8-part choir, because that would be setting students up to fail, because they can't. With a choir of 20 kids, that's unfair to ask of them. That'd be unfair to ask of a lot of choirs, honestly. But so yeah, I think it's when going into a rural school, you have to have realistic musical expectations, and that's where I think it becomes so important to be a teacher first. It's being a great musician is awesome. That knowledge is invaluable, but to know that your job is to meet the kids where they're at and really start at that level and work their way up is so important.
And I think, I can't remember where I heard this. It was probably Mrs. Popejoy, but it's saying that you are teaching people far and away more than you are teaching your subject matter.
Yep.
And I mean, like, that's what it's all about, really.
Both through music.
100%. Yeah. You are teaching them skills that will better them as people. And, kids, when they're that age, they're learning how to be their best self. Looking ahead, you just kind of talked about this a little bit. You spoke on the idea of each year you try to take another step.
Mm-hmm.
What goals do you have, say, in the next 5 years in music education, and how do you hope to continue making an impact?
5 years is a long ways ahead.
It doesn't have to be 5 years.
Yeah, I'm very much a person that I live now. Like, I live in the present. What can I do right now that's going to affect tomorrow to make it better? But I think some specific goals that I'd love to see in my particular program, I'd love to have some sort of audition to group for band. I have my one for choir, but it's probably a jazz band type of thing. The hard part of that is scheduling. That it was hard enough to schedule my choir. I just don't know how I can do that. But I'd love to have some sort of audition to group for band. I'd love to have, for a while we were doing some general music classes for high school. I'd love to do that again and offer something, maybe a more music history, theory, all that class, kind of for kids who may be interested in music, not necessarily as a career, but who want to dive deeper.
Yeah.
And I think I have kids now who will be willing to take a class like that. Mm-hmm. And then figuring out a way that I can have more time in small groups or one-on-one with my junior high kids to focus on that middle school level. Because I think right now that's kind of missing. That's a hole in the program. And it's not to say that it's been done wrong for all these years, but I think that's something that can be stronger. But yeah, it's again, it's back to that philosophy. It's being driven but patient. That you're always trying to affect change, but you are willing to wait for the right opportunities for when that change occurs.
Driven but patient. I think we found our tagline for
There we go.
for the podcast episode. I love that. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you being here and taking some time out of your holiday break to come chat with us. And
Ours is a blast. I love talking about education.
good.
That's what it's all about.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Josh hopefully will have a voice for the next episode. So thank you for bearing with me as I do my best to interview. And how fun was it that I got to interview my husband? This was cool. It worked out.
Thanks for tuning into the Popplers Music Podcast. We hope today's conversation sparked new ideas and reminded you why your work matters. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe. Share it with a fellow educator or musician and leave us a review. It helps more music lovers find us. For more resources, sheet music, instruments, and support for your program, visit us at popplersmusic.com. Until next time.